guess we're about halfway through. Today is the 11th, right? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 5 days. Okay, halfway. Okay. You're not too exhausted yet, are you? No, good. All right. Let's start with a short meditation to set our motivation. Was that my voice? Okay. As always, we start with breathing meditation. And in a space in front of you, visualize an embodiment of limitless, boundless compassion, as well as deep and profound wisdom. With all the obscurations of the mind gone. A being like Buddha Shakyamuni, inspiring you and guiding you so that one day you achieve the same state. At the same time, you're surrounded by all sentient beings. Quietly seated around you. Wanting to be free from any dissatisfactory state, but constantly accumulating the causes for more problems, more pain, more suffering. being under the control of karma and afflictions. Having been close to us in limitless lifetimes in the past, extremely close to us. As our parents, our children, as our best friends. And even now, equal in their importance when it comes to our survival, and our spiritual development. So therefore, let's develop or generate this sincere aspiration affectionately thinking, may they be free from all dissatisfactory states and their causes. And may I be able to help them in overcoming all these. So it is with that purpose, with that determination, that we strive to transform our mind, reprogram our mind, by removing what's extra. It's not in the nature of our mind. To generate boundless compassion and profound wisdom. That is the awakening state, the awakened state of a Buddha, for the benefit of each and every being. that's what we're here for. So without letting go of our motivation, let's recite the prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, by the two accumulations created by practicing generosity and the other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, by the two accumulations created by practicing generosity and the other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, by the two accumulations created by practicing generosity and the other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. Why do we do prostrations in the beginning? That weird thing we do, right? Something with our arms. Is that just exercise so we can sit for a longer period? What does that mean? Why do we do it? We means, I don't know how many of you, well, I can only see it, so at the side. But, so yeah, I know for sure I'm doing it and some others. So why? What is all this? What purpose does it serve? Does it have any purpose, or is it just, like I said, exercise? What do you think?
It's kind of a way to bow down and take refuge of body, speech, and mind.
To bow down and take refuge with body, speech, and mind. But we're already taking refuge. We're already doing it here. We're reciting the prayers. Okay, I'm just, don't get me wrong. I'm so used to this debating kind of like, so I'm not saying you're wrong, but just to challenge it. Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, please go ahead. Yeah, got it. You pay respect to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. They don't need our respect.
No, like, not respect in a way of, like he's a god or something. You pay respect, like, inside yourself.
You pay respect to yourself?
No, not to yourself.
Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha within yourself.
Like you don't give respect to him as a, for his guidance. This is what I'm.
For his guidance. Okay, all right. So pay respect for his guidance. Okay, Tyler?
Well, I feel like we're giving respect and paying homage through voice a lot, and then potentially the Buddhas or the Arhats so that people can hear us, but using your body, right? It's just like another method that we're not doing, I guess, when we're chanting or when we're singing prayers or when we're meditating. So it's like leveraging a different sense, maybe.
Can you say the last bit
Like
again?
leveraging a different, like you're using your body
Okay.
rather than just your voice,
Okay.
which is like audible.
Right.
Or your mind, so you're using
Okay.
like a different sense to kind of showcase your respect.
Your respect. Okay. So I guess mainly we it seems like respect, refuge, and respect with regard to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Okay, so far, yes, Gita?
I have a feeling that since we are working and meditating and learning how to do away with the self-centeredness and then slowly replace it with equality and exchange of feelings of love to all
Okay.
sentient beings.
Yes.
So we are actually also paying respect to the Buddha and
Okay.
the Sangha and the Dhamma, thanking them as well as setting the intention for the day and replacing the self-centeredness with the positive.
So it's a kind of gratitude as well.
The gratitude.
Expressing
and
gratitude.
intention for the day.
Okay, all right. Okay, so in order to follow their example, and therefore kind of a sign of gratitude for guiding us in that way. All right, okay. Simran, do you want?
Also to kind of in a way physically, by physical action of cutting down the ego, like awareness.
Cutting down the ego.
You just like bow down and
All right. Okay, so it's also an expression of humility, of cutting down the ego. All right. Did anyone else? Anything? Anyone else who'd like to add something? I'm not disagreeing. I think these are all beautiful reasons. Yes.
Because I want to become like them. I want to take on their qualities. So at that sense, I bow down out of humility to become their body, speech.
So out of humility, I bow down to become like that. Yes. Okay. May I add something? I think, or the reason I bow down is because of gravity. Because of, no, I'm kidding. This is only half the reason. No, I mean, out of gravity in the sense, we live in a world, if you want to receive something, if you want this cup to be filled with a vessel, you need to lower the cup, right? You won't be able to pour something into the cup if it is too high up. You need to lower it. I believe that's why I believe the reason that physically things work that way, that also in general when we see someone we respect, we may slightly bow. As in like you lower yourself. And I think, I don't know, I can't say this has become part of our culture and so forth, but I'm thinking there's some correlation. So we're actually bowing to the Buddha, kind of saying, I'm ready to receive inspiration. I'm ready. So I'm lowering myself because oftentimes arrogance is associated with, right? Now, the physical movement is actually not important. Mainly it's the mind in that moment. The physical just helps us to be attentive. Because like 3 times to think, oh, I'm open, I'm ready, I'm like this kind of humility, I'm opening myself, there's more to learn. Please inspire me through your words, yeah. So in my own case, I'll do it because I don't know a thing. So please inspire me through your incredible wisdom, your incredible. So it's a bit like, I'm ready to receive. And if I don't think that, what are the 3 prostrations? Exercise. So it's really more the mental. It's more the mental. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, even during the teachings, for instance, His Holiness nowadays can't do prostrations because of his knees. But 100% His Holiness is doing it mentally, right? But as Tyler said, there's also that physical aspect. So it makes it more powerful because out of your mental, the mental is the main aspect, but the physical also, with the physical you also accumulate, you make it stronger. You make it stronger. So a physical expression, not just the verbal as usual, or not just the mental, which of course is the main, but you also include the body. But it also helps us to keep mindful. The mind is most important. So it's not about mainly paying respect or praising the Buddha. The Buddha doesn't need to be praised. I mean, the only reason he's happy to be praised if it benefits us. So it's really for our own benefit. It goes back to practicing generosity. Remember, to have the attitude of gratitude towards the person who needs our generosity, who benefits from our generosity, instead of feeling, oh, we should be thanked, they should be grateful towards us. They give us this opportunity to accumulate something that is much more precious than the little bit of money we offer, right? So therefore, similarly here, it's It's not like towards the Buddha, worshipping the Buddha because the Buddha really needs it and wants it. And no, it's not about that. So we do use words, sometimes worshipping, etc. But it's much more about creating a connection and opening ourselves to that. Right? I mean, if we create a connection with someone, we move closer towards someone, we allow ourselves to receive the benefit. And basically, yeah, as in many cultures, it is because I believe really has to do with gratitude, with gravity. You want to pour something into something, that something has to lower itself to be able to receive it. So in that moment, mentally and physically, and maybe even verbally, I mean, sometimes people recite something at the same time, I bow to the Buddha, the Dharma, and so forth. So by way of all three doors, body, speech, and mind, I'm lowering myself as a symbol from my mind, only from my own mind, to be receiving it and throw out that arrogance. Yeah. So you find this in many different religions, and there are different reasons, and they're just as valuable and just as important. But in the Buddhist tradition, yeah, it's not like just worshipping someone and they're pleased, and then it's different. It's all about taking personal responsibility. Unfortunately, I wish it was easier than that. If I could just, someone saved me, like a savior. Really, I wished for a savior. But, yeah, well, from a Buddhist point of view, we have to do the work. We need the guidance. We need, interdependence is you always need someone, right? I mean, we needed our parents in the beginning. We needed our teachers. We needed our peers. We needed our friends, neighbors. Now, in terms of the spiritual path, we need those who already put on the gas mask. But eventually, we have to use the gas mask ourselves, but someone can help it to put it on. And then, of course, we need to breathe ourselves. Does that make sense? All right, just to share with you, at least my opinion. And possibly if you talk to other people, they have different reasons and, whatever their reasons. But yeah, I think one of the main reasons is, for me personally, is this kind of opening myself to that and not be like, right? Because arrogance, it's such an interesting mental state. People may not even recognize we have it. Usually arrogance is like the most obvious cases. And arrogance is also not always there. But we'll find it in ourselves again and again. Like, I just know a little better. I know it better. Or we feel, possibly there are things that we're good at, maybe better as someone else. And everyone's got their own area. So it's not like I'm good at, I don't know, hammering a nail in the wall and someone else is very good at hanging a picture. Or I don't know. It's like even with children, they may not be so good when it comes to writing, but they're incredible artists or mathematicians. We're all so different in terms of our talents, at least. And oftentimes arrogance comes in. So even the humblest people, they sometimes, feel like, oh, I know better. And I must say, unfortunately, as Westerners, sometimes we come into, like, for instance, I remember in the beginning when I first arrived here and with the nuns, and the nuns did things in a certain way, and I thought, oh, that's the wrong way, you do it differently, right? And I was like, later I learned, my way works back home, but here, it's ingenious. It may take a little longer, or maybe sometimes be different. It doesn't necessarily take longer, but it works perfectly. And so then, having had that experience myself, I see others thinking, oh, no, you do it all wrong. And initially the nuns were like, okay, teach us. And they always were like, that's not working. And now they're like, thank you. And they don't even know. They know they've got the confidence is working much better the way they do it. Of course, sometimes they learn new things, and that definitely that interchange. But there's sometimes this arrogance, like, know better. Yeah. I think it's changing now, but yeah, this kind of, oh, the refugees, so maybe they don't know, oh, they are incredible, the way they do things, and everywhere. I mean, it's ingenious, it's all working. Therefore, I'm thinking, arrogance, we have to be careful, all of us, even though we are usually described as a humble person, right? Are we appearing as humble because we're too arrogant to show how arrogant we are? Who knows, right? Yeah, I mean, I'm saying it's the self-centered mind. It plays its tricks, right? I mean, we have incredible minds. We have incredible wisdom and understanding that needs to slowly unfold or you know, come to the surface. But right now, it's obstructed by that particular mind. So not to identify with the mind, but to be aware of it, to be mindful, to be on guard. Yeah. And so these are all practices like, you self-centered mind, you just shut up now. I'm going to do my, right? I don't know enough and I want to learn. Okay, so that's it. Now going back to, sure, going back to emptiness. I won't stretch it too far, of course, but I do want to, yeah, go a little bit back into our discussion yesterday. How was the discussion group? How did that go? Did you get into emptiness? What is the I and so forth? Not really. Yeah, it's not necessarily one of those feel-good kind of practices. I mean, everyone reacts differently. Of course, love and compassion warms our heart. It's inspiring. So I want to keep that inspiration flowing, and I sooner or later go back to compassion. But now I want to get a little bit into emptiness as well, so to keep the balance. And again, it's, you see, like if I mean, dependent arising, you're going to hear a lot about dependent arising, but I don't want to get into it too early, because as I said, if we don't start to kind of undo our sense of solidity, that is not just on a rational level, but even more importantly on a more emotional, on a deeper level, which therefore controls everything we do, everything we say, and physically the way we move, and of course most importantly the way we think. Unless we undo that a little bit, dependent arising becomes just another concrete, solid dependent arising. Somehow we make it work. That's just based on the fact, for instance, when you talk to anyone, whether they're Buddhist or not, you use the word dependent arising, you explain it, everyone agrees. But everyone at the same time holds on to inherent existence. So it's actually contradictory, dependent arising on one hand and inherent existence. So you see how our mind usually has kind of a rough sense of what dependent arising means. But to really understand dependent arising on a deeper level, we first need to really understand what that lack of inherent existence really means. And to use the word inherent existence is not going to do it. We don't even use that word that much. Oh, that milk is inherently white. Who says that when they go to take their breakfast? We do use the word, it comes up, but it's not like one of those colloquial terms that you use a lot. Tyler, do you use the word inherent a lot? No, no, right? No. Sometimes you read it, you know, it comes up in books and stuff, more kind of maybe about science, etc. It means naturally, just naturally it is, right? But alternatively, other words are used that may be helpful. Objectively. There's nothing that exists objectively. Which in other words means, what does it mean? What does it mean? Yes?
Outside of our own senses.
Outside of our mind, okay. But then what about saying, look at the situation objectively?
If two people look at the same situation, they come to the same conclusion. That's what psychology defines objective as.
Look at something objectively. Is that what it means?
Different use of the word.
It's a very different use of the words. So when I say, come on, look at it objectively, what do I usually mean?
Don't put emotion.
Yes. I think in a day-to-day kind of, don't look at it from the point of view of your emotions. Leave your emotions out. Look at it objectively. So you see, just as we use the word independently, as we use the word inherently, as we use the word intrinsically, or as we use the word objectively, it's only in relation to something specific, in relation to our emotions. So don't look at the situation objectively, without your preconception, without your emotions. Yeah, exactly. And then in other contexts, it could mean something else in psychology, but usually the way we use it on a day-to-day basis, I guess we could agree that's how we use it. But there's no absolute objectivity. As in, like, literally, as Tyler said, that would be literally, or in the absolute sense, don't need a mind, just know it for what it is. That's a contradiction of terminology. We know only through the mind. To know something, to see something, you need the mind. And that makes it subjective. And the mind perceives things in certain ways dependent on many different factors. So it's not like a piece of glass that is like a looking glass into the world. No, our perception is totally colored for lack of a better word, influenced, there's a better word, totally influenced by, of course, our sense faculties, right? Whoops, all changes. It's just a blur of colors, kind of shapes, right? So if I take off my glasses, the world looks differently. Yeah, the world is different. And again, we had the whole discussion. We all see something differently depending on where we stand, where we sit, where we are right now, but also dependent on our sense faculty, right? Our everything, like some people, if they eat certain foods, they get an allergic reaction. And so already when they put the food in their mouth, it's like, ugh, they feel disgusted by it even before having that reaction. Or once you got sick. I remember when I was a little girl, I loved pears. I remember like just memories of like pear juice dripping down my chin. And then one day I got sick with food poisoning, and I just happened to have a pear on that day, but nothing to do with the food poisoning. That was for a different reason. There was some meat, I guess, I ate. I could not eat pears any longer. Ugh. For a few years back, I started eating them again, and now it's okay. I like them, but I'm not that enthusiastic as I was as a child. So what happened? Because I ate something specific, I started hating pears. There's no logic to it, right? In a sense, I mean, it was just a mistake. But just seeing them made me want to throw up. And tasting them anyway. So if someone kind of smuggled a piece of pear in my fruit salad, I noticed right away I couldn't eat it, right? So is it delicious or not? Objectively what? Well, it used to be, so my taste buds, no problem. But due to this memory, so you see how the conceptual mind plays in as well. It's not just our senses. We usually think our senses they're pretty objective, see things for what they are. And then the conceptual mind comes in. Oh, no. The conceptual mind is right there. And so people who are very health conscious, they automatically, they read this is a superfood. It's also like one of those tricks. As if you just ate that, you'd be okay, right? Superfood, like people then want to just eat that, and that's extreme. But no, the point is here, like people who are self-conscious, so sorry, that was a bit, I didn't need to talk about that, but the point is, you like it automatically because you know it's good for you. Or you dislike it automatically because you know it's not good for you. There are plenty of people like that, right? And then there are other people who would like comfort food, right? That makes them feel, right? Like it relaxes them, gets the stress, I don't know, potatoes with a lot of cream cheese or something, or warm butter, whatever, these kind of heavy foods. starchy fruit. So anyway, the point is, it all depends on our mind. Okay? Liking heat or not liking heat. It's all to do with our mental consciousness. So it all comes in. And it goes as far, even scientists have understood that unless you know what a tree is, you don't see a tree. If you have no concept of a tree, you won't see a tree. Or whatever you see is very different from what someone sees who knows about trees. I mean, think about a scientist who knows everything, like a biologist or whatever, their expertise is. Like, for instance, they know exactly every plant, the name of every plant, how it grew, how it came about. They know everything about the plants in this area. When they walk through this area, they see things very different to how we see things. Green. I walk around, it's green. And maybe some pink here and there, or whatever. No, but they identify things in a very different way. Or when you go to certain parts of the world where there's a lot of snow, and each type of snow even has a name. For us, it's just white, cold, wet, snow. Snow is snow. Yeah, but the moment you start distinguishing, you're able to, you have labels to use, and that help you to distinguish. And once you've distinguished, so you've labeled, you imputed, and then you can distinguish. You see things suddenly. It's this, it's that, and so forth, very differently. We assume everyone sees the same thing. That's the self-centered mind. Believing that what I see is what's out there. And my perspective is the right perspective. I see things as they are. And if someone doesn't, they're plainly wrong. Does that make sense? And not on a rational level so much. Yeah, we would be ready to admit, oh, I don't know everything, or I don't know. But deep within, without us even noticing, more on an emotional level, oh, they're just wrong. Oh, they just don't understand it. They don't get it. How weird they are, or whatever. Weird. I mean, even like when I first came to India, I thought, that's weird music. That's weird food. It was all weird, right? That wasn't normal. What was normal was what I grew up with. That was normal, right? And even before that, I spent some time in Japan, and I was like, who eats fish for breakfast? And rice? That's not normal. And then I came here, and the Tibetans, they sometimes eat tukpa for breakfast. Who eats noodle soup for breakfast? That's not normal, right? What is normal? Bread and butter, and that was normal. See? Do you recognize that within yourself? What is normal music? Okay, with globalization, things actually change everywhere. So, of course, the kind of music we like is usually from the US, or maybe Britain, Australia, and that's about it. Usually, mainly what's on the radio, even here, I guess. But there's still a lot of traditional music that you hear. Influenced, of course, nowadays by other countries. Yes, Tyler, you want to say?
There's a beautiful TED Talk called Weird or Different by Derek Sievers.
Can you say again?
There's a beautiful TED Talk.
A TED Talk by whom?
By Derek Sievers called Weird or Different, that summarizes all of these things so beautifully. And my favorite one is, in parts of China, there are doctors where you pay them when you're well. And every single time you're sick, you don't pay them because they failed at their job to treat you well. Right? And I think that's such a wild one.
That's so wild, thinking of all the doctors.
It's a 3-minute TED Talk, and it's really beautiful, but it goes through all of these little contradictions, or what we would think. That's weird, but it's just different.
Do you mind if you have pen and paper to write the name of the person on there and leave it here? And then those who are interested, because I didn't catch the name, I wouldn't be able to find it. So if you don't mind to just put it here, the TED Talk. That's interesting. Yeah, there's so much now available online that supports many of these ideas, right? So anyway, so it's good to get a sense of that. it's really beautiful when we think, like when we get to know our own mind in such a way as well. What is normal and what is not. Yeah? Do you have that sense, like what is normal? As in like, I guess for you, like having been brought up in India, what is a normal breakfast is different. I mean, paronta for breakfast. I like it, by the way. Now I can, but initially it was like, not for breakfast, lunch or dinner, okay. Yeah, okay. So, therefore, this objectivity, that's very similar. That's not, it's kind of looking at it from a different perspective, of course. It's like being inherently. So if it's objectively, why do we say inherent? When we say it's objective, then it's from everything that is there, all the characteristics, everything comes from the side of the object, right? That's the sense that a table, the way I perceive it, has nothing to do with my mind. It only has to do with the object. The object is out there, existing from its own side, the way it appears to me. That's how it feels. Now we use words like that, from its own side, right? Is that a common phrase in English? It exists from its own size. Do you use that? No, right? No, it's very Buddhist. That's Buddhist hybrid English. But still, it's not like as bad as some other words, Buddhist hybrid English words that can be a little weird. Direct perceiver or inferential cognition. And those are really not words that you use, that you easily understand as well.
There is a word in Hebrew.
Yes, there's a word?
In and of itself. In one word.
In and of itself. Oh, in and of itself. Is that a common English word, in and of itself? I learned English learning the Dharma together, pretty much.
In philosophy class, but
In philosophy it's used. In and of itself. In Hebrew you've got that word? Nice. Even in German, like the Dharma words I now know in German, I don't know, I don't know, they're weird. I don't remember ever using them. That doesn't mean anything, lots of words I don't know anyway in German. But that's nice, you have in and of itself. There you go, you don't, yeah. So yeah. You didn't connect it with this idea, yeah. But you see, in and of itself, again, something exists within it and from itself, from its own side. So in and of itself, as in like, it doesn't need anything else just to be what it is now, how we perceive it, in other words. Does that make sense? So nothing comes from the side of the mind, nothing comes from the side, nothing comes from the side of our mind. It's everything coming from the side of the object. That's how it appears. That's how it appears. I'm not saying that we believe in that necessarily, but that's how it appears. We walk into a room, think. There's no sense, oh, I'm perceiving this table this way because of X, Y, and Z. No, there's just a table over there. To our sense consciousnesses, it totally appears that way. Because deep within, innately, we believe it to exist that way, right? We're not even aware that that mind that believes it to exist that way pops up every now and then and reinforces that. And our thoughts influence how things appear to us. Again, you see a tree or not, if you have some idea what a tree is, if you have no clue, you don't even know it's a plant, you don't even know it's something natural, you don't even know it's not man-made, you have no idea. You're not going to see what I see because of knowing at least roughly what a tree is. Right? That's so important. That's why a blind person, I remember I talked about the blind person, I never told the end of the story, I just realized. The blind person, the person who was blind, not since birth, this person had formed some concepts of the shapes and colors and had already developed a sense, okay, this is here, this is there. But for too long, they were blind. I think his children were adults when he got cured of his blindness. And so it was just this blurs of colors. And he describes this experience that when he came from the doctor, so he was using still the cane, he was still feeling his way around, because that's how he had made sense of reality. So for us, if I feel my way around, I don't recognize tables versus pillars and what have you, right? I mean, maybe, but it takes some time. I need to think about it. It doesn't go like automatically in the way I look around and I see everything automatically. So like they through touching, they very much get a sense where everything is. And the next time they walk into a room, they don't readily bump into something as we do. So the mind has already a concept of everything, but not a visual. And so he describes this situation. He's in the car and on the highway driving home, and there's like at the highway they have these huge, what do you call them, boards with like the names of the place that you're they're called billboards? Oh. Oh, traffic signs. No, not traffic signs.
Like advertisements?
No, not advertisement. No, those are billboards. No, when it says now you're reaching Washington DC, or signs, right? Just signs where it tells you the next exit, you reach this place, etc. So they're huge. I know at least, and I've seen it also in movies in the US, or even saw it in the US, like these huge green. They're green in Germany. They're blue. So he's driving in the car towards that sign, thinking there's something coming towards me. Oh my God, right? It's like, okay, just seeing something huge coming towards him, but have no concept in that moment of it's static, it's not moving. We're going to go underneath it. It's not coming towards me, because from far away, it doesn't seem as high up. But our mind automatically knows. Right? Our eye consciousness sees it. We're going to drive underneath it. It's not like, oh my God, it's 100 meters away, but something green is coming towards me. No, not at all. Does that make sense? Yeah? So this blind...
It's like what they said when people saw the first movies.
Ah.
When they saw a train approaching and people were hiding in their seats because they thought the train was coming towards them.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh yeah, I didn't know that. It's almost like 3D movies, like we don't watch 3D movies often. I've only watched it once, and then it was like something was coming towards me. It was like a children's movie. So I guess people when they watch movies for the first time, that's also very interesting. Movie watching. You need to learn to watch movies in that you don't get the cues. There are some movie cues that you get if you watch it enough, because I know the nuns don't watch Western movies. They've never really done that since they were little. So there were times when we watched a movie together and I would say, oh, now this person's going to get caught. And they're like, how do you know? And I'm like, well, they just had that little scene. And we always know. We know, oh, there's something going to happen now. The music changes. There's some cues. Right? And most of the movies, they have them. And the funniest thing that once happened to me, my very, very dear friend, who really doesn't watch movies, she says, I don't understand movies, right? She doesn't understand them. And the fact is that they've become faster. I mean, if you watch some of these old movies from the 50s, bird, 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 tree, right? So they're so much faster now. Within half an hour, someone kills someone, the police comes and they crack the case. And the guy goes to prison in half an hour. It's so quick now. You just need to show short scenes and the rest our mind replaces. So we know what's going to go on. So for someone who's never watched movies, they're like totally overwhelmed. And so a friend of mine, like I said, she'd never watched movies. She came from Zanskar, a very high area in Tibet. Her brother is the one from Singapore who helped that lady when she was bleeding. And this friend, she's so honest, and she's such a good person. She's incredible. Do you know her, Chunsum? Maybe you know her from Germany. Anyway, amazing person, really she is, and so intelligent. But she came from Zanskar when she was 18. Until that time, she didn't even really know what trees were, because where she lived, there were no trees. she didn't know much about anything. I mean, she lived in the mountains. Sometimes when people came trekking, and there were only few, she found these little Maggie bags from soup, and she loved them. They were so pretty, she tells me. And she heard about bananas so often, right? And so no one told her how to eat a banana, so her first banana was terrible. Yeah. But anyway, she's so intelligent. She's so great. You know, I have a question about anything about my phone, she knows it. You know, about so many things. She's so bright. But the point is, I was with her in a restaurant many years ago, and since she'd never watched a movie, they no longer do that, but for a while, because there was nowhere any television, there was no internet yet, or at least not such that you could watch movies. So they had TVs there, and you would go there to eat something and watch a movie. It was so special. And we were having tuppa, and there was a movie by Richard Gere, An Officer and a Gentleman. We were watching that. And the friend of Richard Gere, I don't even remember the movie, but I remember the friend of Richard Gere kills himself. And my friend is crying. We're in the middle of the restaurant, and she's like, oh my God, oh my. She was like, for her, someone killed himself. She had never seen this before. And she was crying and crying. And when I was like, calm down, it's not real. Yeah, but it's still real, it's there. And I'm like, but not, they're just acting. I mean, she knew that, but emotionally, she was not used to seeing something like that. So emotionally, she was overwhelmed. And she hates violent scenes, like, no way. We're so used to it. We're so used to it. We're so used to seeing people being, I mean, it gets more and more violent, and yeah. So it's all our mind being affected in a certain way. We don't see things, and that is what I noticed with people from different cultures who weren't brought up like us, who were brought up in the way people were brought up, well, 200-300 years ago. Very different mind, very different perception of reality. So therefore, it needs to really sink in. It's subjective, totally, right? Yeah, and I live in this own world believing this is reality. So what about the self? Saying all this, having said all this, we're already undoing these structures, this sense of solidity. Bring in science, by all means. Because the problem is with science, we hear it, we think, great, but it never sinks in. There's no blue outside, there's no red outside. Well, science is usually not meditated on. It's not like you have a physics class and then at the end of class you meditate on what you just learned. It doesn't sink in. It's interesting, it's fascinating, but it's almost like, yeah, that's reality, but not mine, so never mind. Right? There's the scientific reality and there's mine. And they do mix, they do mingle, sooner or later, they do mingle. You know, with mathematics, one thing that's really funny. We are very mathematically conditioned. Very mathematically conditioned. We're not even aware of it. We're very much conditioned when it comes to time. My whole thought process is based on time. Which day of the week, which day of the month. Time is a huge concept as part of, because I have to keep deadlines and come to a class at a certain times. But Tibetans traditionally, for instance, they don't have that. There's no sense now it's morning, now it's 8 o'clock and so forth. Like we do things at a certain time. Traditionally, if they don't have a watch, it's pretty much watch the sun and that's the end of it. But also numbers. Yeah. So I go, okay, 20 of this, 20 of that, that's 40. No, some of my friends, they take a little longer for that. And what's really funny is like the way we automatically add up. I remember one of my teachers, I translated for him once, and he was asked by some Westerners to tell him his life story. So the way we do it in the West, years, you use years. 5 years, 10 years. So Tibetans don't really do that. They traditionally would say for some time and for, and then 5 years is not necessarily 5, but he gave all those numbers, and I knew he wasn't keeping track. So I was in my mind adding up what he was doing. And he was halfway through his life, and I said, Genna, you're 95 now. Right? I mean, at that time he was like, what, 40, 50 maybe? And he was like 10 years of this, 20, 15 years of that. And he just added a little bit too many years. So that in my mind, as I was calculating, and he had just described his life halfway through, 95 is probably exaggerated, but he wasn't even as old, at that time yet, and still he had only described half of his life. That doesn't happen to us, right? We're much more into numbers, so the numbers stick in our head somehow, and yeah, we kind of know I did it for this long, and then it's not like a little bit more next time. We usually don't forget that. Does that make sense? So again, something that comes natural, we take it for granted, but that's not true for all cultures. Yeah? So let it sink in, let it sink in. This is totally subjective, totally subjective. So now the I. Let's deal with that one, because that is the object of our self-centered mind. The way you see me and the way I see myself is very different, I'm pretty sure. There are things you don't know about myself that only I know, but the things that I am in denial about that you easily notice, but since I'm in denial about it, I don't, right? Whatever that may be. You see myself very differently, I'm pretty sure. And so this is true for all of you. And I hardly know you'll have one sense of you. And again, that doesn't match reality. But the way I see myself, that's also not in accordance with reality. And on top of course, and I'm not even talking about exaggerating the way the I exists. I'm just saying the characteristics that you can associate, that are associated with this mind and body. And there's so much happening on a subtler level, on a subconscious level, that I'm absolutely not aware of. And you, of course, probably are not either. I mean, I'm not my subconscious level. But you see, there's so much going on that there's no self-awareness of. And so I think it's so clear-cut. What I see, what I don't see, what I know, and this is me. And this just happens to be more important than anyone else. And I never question it. Never, ever, ever, ever. Usually. I mean, why would people do that? We're too busy with the external sense perception, really. We're so distracted with finding pleasure, avoiding problems, right? I mean, even going to work to have the pleasure of more money, to buy more pleasure, right? Money is all about buying pleasant sense objects. What else is it? It's buying pleasant, being able, even if you keep the money and you don't spend it, but you know you can buy pleasant things with it. So already that gives you some comfort. You know, those who don't, who save it, don't, for harder times, that I won't experience suffering because I can buy still my favorite foods, etc. Yeah? So we're able to put it off, to not waste it away right now and think of the future. But again, it's future pleasure. We live in a world that in the texts are described as the desire realm. There are different states of existence that living beings live in, but we live in the one desire. And look at the 21st century, right? Incredible. The commercials are all made to trigger desire. All of them. Commercials, I really am fascinated by commercials. Because what they suggest, what they imply, how they affect our mind is so clever. Who wouldn't want to live in a clean house with blue skies in the back, white curtains and butterflies flying past? And then Ariel. What are the other? What are the different names of the surf powder? Right, these washing powders. So you associate that washing powder with blue skies, white curtains, and butterflies. Right? That's the connection that is made in our mind. Or car commercials are so funny. They're so funny. You know, the self, the guy, the cool guy, with a cool woman right next to him, riding into the sunshine, free. You know, it's always like the ocean on one side, the mountains on the other. The sun is setting or rising, freedom, cool shades. It's like, wow. And you know, subliminally, what is the word? Subliminal kind of messages that are in these, so fascinating. The psychology of commercials is incredible. And we're all influenced by that. We don't even know why we buy this stuff. We see it often enough on the news, we trust it. We trust what we know. We're scared of what we don't know. So you just need to show it often enough. If it's everywhere around you, you trust it because you're familiar with it. Simple as that. That's how commercials work. Or you attach to an actor or an actress. And so if they wear that particular, I don't know, kind of jeans or whatever, kind of what they call brand of jeans, then you're going to buy it. And you don't even know why. Isn't that interesting how mind is influenced? So here the first step is to recognizing how this is doing and not be fooled in that way. To buy the more expensive product that's only expensive because it was on the commercials. It's the same properties, same thing, maybe even worse. Yeah. So being fooled so much, incredibly. But I don't worry about that so much. But it's just part of that behavioral pattern. Does that make sense? We are so controlled by things and we think we're in control. We think we're in control. Kind of know our mind is pretty much in control. That we have that sense. But other times when things are going well and there are no negative emotions that we don't like, we're in a good mood, we think we're in control. Yeah? No. But anyway, what is in control? What is that thing that feels it's in control? Again, going back to that question. So just now, hopefully get a better sense of the way we perceive things, what we do. There's so many levels that we're not even aware of it. We're not aware of many of our minds. There's no awareness of many of the minds, and there's no awareness of many of our actions. Even our expressions externally, we don't know. Yeah, that's something for you guys, micro-expressions. But I'm not talking about that alone, so I'm going back to the I now. In the center of all that is the I. In the center of my mind and body, right, the I. And of course, in the center of my universe, it's the I. Okay, so let me ask you. You all have a sense of I, right? Okay. Is there a sense that it's located somewhere? Kind of like if I were to ask you, does anyone have a sense it's here in the elbow? No. Last place that people think their eye is. At your knee? No. So where do you think your eye is? Like if you were to, right? Some people feel it's in this area. Okay, in this area. All right. Really up here? Up here? Is there any other place except, is it like in the area of the eyes? Above that? Behind that? Like, is there a specific place or is it kind of an undefinable area up here? Anywhere else?
When I have that strong sense of I, it's usually in my chest.
In the center of your chest. Aha. Interesting. A lot of people, it always depends, I guess. If it's more emotional, I would say it's probably more in the center of your chest. If it's more rational, it seems more, yeah, okay, interesting. So, especially with this feeling in the chest, if the I were there, then that would mean the I would constantly look up. It would be here, right? And it would be looking up the throat, up to the brain. Or it would be looking from here down. But that doesn't happen, actually. Like there's a sense it's here, but if the I were really here and the I is the observer, it should really be looking from exactly this spot down and exactly from that spot up.
Why up and down? Why not front and back?
Pardon?
Why up and down?
Oh, yeah, back side as well. So it would see like the rib cage, for instance. I just, yeah, I chose up and down, but you could also say sideways, you know, it would see this rib cage and that, the lungs probably, right? They're all in that area. The organ heart. So sometimes the heart area is described as the center of the chest, which is not, in Buddhism, it doesn't refer to the organ heart. That's different. Okay, does that make sense? So there's, yeah, a feeling, it's even located somewhere in the body, which again seems to suggest mind and body are different, because it's kind of like located within the body, but it's not the body. Isn't that an interesting sensation? Yeah. So yesterday I said much more, I talked more about what is the I, what does it exist? How does it exist? How do you think it exists? And we had all those discussions. But of course, your answers were mixed with your own sense of I. So I did indicate many times, or I stressed many times, the I exists, don't think the I exists. And I'm still holding on to, I mean, that is absolutely true. The I definitely exists. The problem is how it exists to us. Yeah, we do perceive an I, but we perceive it in an exaggerated way, which is such that we even think it's somewhere located in the body, in a particular place. Okay. So, do you all agree this is unrealistic? So why do we believe it's here? And why up here? What's the reason for up here, this area? Those are the two areas usually. Throat, I've never heard. Belly. Every now and then, people kind of go with the belly, but that's quite rare. Although it's interesting, the function of the belly, as scientists know now, they call it the second brain. Yeah, and in Buddhism, there's a lot of minds, or there's a lot of minds being located. There are energy chakras. I mean, energy centers down here in the navel, for instance, very important. It basically runs all the way through, so it makes sense to perceive this or associate this area with the mind. Although the mind can be anywhere, but the energy winds that are important for the mind. You can't have a mind without energy. And so the energy is not the mind, and the mind is not the energy. They're they're linked. They're linked. They're described as a horse or a mount, and that which rides on it. Therefore, the mind moves. The mind does move, but only because there's this energy. So what is the mind really? There's an experiencing aspect that we call mind. We label that mind. And then there is the energy that has movement, that has direction, or that exists somewhere. So therefore, the mind being non-physical, it still has something physical that carries it, or that it depends on. And I mean, there's so many other things. Sometimes with the mind, we think we have like a weird perception of it, something very solid, concrete, that is now non-physical, so it doesn't exist in the physical world. But just think impermanence. Impermanence is not physical, right? Your impermanence is not physical, it's not matter. And still it's located, the impermanence of your body is where your body is. Yeah. What do we label impermanence? Impermanence is just the name we give to the changing nature of the fact that your body changes, right? That we label impermanence. Is that matter? No, it depends on physical matter. It depends on that, but it's not matter itself. You just label that impermanence, the change. So similarly, let's take the brain, for instance. The brain is not the mind, because it's not that experiencer. It makes the experience possible. It supports the experience through the chemicals and the nerves and so forth. However, just that experiencer, that itself being non-physical, just like impermanence is non-physical. So like that, the mind is just there's some function that experiences, and that we call mind. There's nothing, still it's very much dependent on at least the energy. You can never have mind without energy. Which is why every thought creates an energy. The energy is changed slightly. And we can often pick up on that, right? A very loving, a very compassionate person who has a lot of compassion and love all the time, the energy has changed because of the mind. So when we meet them, we may feel comfortable, we may feel calm, versus someone who's very aggressive. We could be seeing the micro expressions, reading them and not knowing why we feel uncomfortable. That's also possible. But I believe because we have energy and they have energy, and the energies, they connect. It's not like that they cannot leave the body, for instance. Also, the external energy has an influence on our body. That's why weather has an influence on our body, right? Ashwin, did you just?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Trying to understand in the 5 aggregates,
Mm-hmm.
where is the energy come? That which you can.
Of the 5 aggregates, what is the energy? The 5 aggregates. Is everyone familiar with the 5 aggregates? Ah, the 5 aggregates. Okay. 5 aggregates, very, very important concept. Let me say something about the 5 aggregates. In Buddhism, there's a very weird way of dividing mind and body. It's actually quite weird. And I'll tell you why it is that way. That's maybe interesting to know, and then it's easier to remember the 5 aggregates. You have the physical aggregate called form. Right? Form. It's called form. Form is weird because we associate form with shape. But form in this context, and it can also mean this in English, refers to anything physical. It's called form, physical. Physical form or physicality. In Hebrew you have a word, I know, physicality, right? So the physicality of a person, I'm not saying physicality other than, that is, like external objects. No. Physicality. That is the body. We can call it the body, we can call it our physical aspects. And the energy is part of that. That's the form aggregate. But then you have 4 others. You have 4 others. One is primary mind, primary consciousness. It's not just consciousness. We think it's just consciousness, but that doesn't make sense, because then the other aggregates, why would you, if it's just consciousness, just ordinary consciousness, then the other 3 don't make sense. The other 3 aggregates, I'll go through them. So it's primary consciousness, primary consciousness. And I'll say why it's called primary consciousness in a minute. And then those are number 1 and 2, body and primary consciousness. Then you have feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, or neither. Then you have discernment, distinguishing. So this is a mental factor or a type of consciousness seen from the point of view of the function of distinguishing between this, that, and the other. So you have primary consciousness, then you have the specific mental function. So a consciousness from the point of view, seen from the point of view of the function of experiencing pleasure, displeasure, or something that is neither. Then you have a mental function or a consciousness seen from the perspective of distinguishing between this, that, and the other. Those are the 4 categories, the first 4 categories. And the last one is called compositional factor. And everything else that is not the other ones is included in that. How random is that, right? Everything else, every other function of the mind, everything else that is not a mind, that is not a body, for instance, the imprints left in our minds, the tendencies, they're not mind, they're not mental, they're not consciousness. They're also not physical, but still, they're there. I mean, we have certain tendencies to get angry. Right now, I have the tendency to get angry, but I'm not angry. So the anger is not there. The tendency to have anger is not the body. So that is called an imprint, right? It's really just a tendency, if you like, an imprint, a potential. And that is also included in that category. Like, let's say, put it this way. You have 5 aggregates and you have 4 drawers. 5 drawers. In one drawer goes anything physical. In one drawer, primary consciousness. Then 2 very important mental factors go in there. And then the last drawer is a little bigger and everything is stuffed in there. right? The way we clean up sometimes, you know, these drawers are important. I put everything in order, so I find stuff, and the rest just goes in there. It feels a bit like that. Of course, it's different. Does that make sense?
What is the function of primary consciousness if
I'll get to that. I'll get to that. It's an important question. Yeah, what is the function? I'll get to that. You wanted to add something?
It includes, so we typically used to say it was, you take out feeling and discrimination, so it's the rest of the 49 mental factors. But then recently I also heard, so it's also the non-associated compositional factors that get put into that category? The imprints you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. Everything.
Yeah.
So what Venerable Pendula just said, she said that usually we talk of 51 mental factors, but actually there are a lot more. So they're mental functions. And I'll need to say something about this. I'll do that in a moment because it's so important. So there are 51 basic mental functions, right? That are not the main function of the mind. And those, 2 of them are described as feeling and discernment. And the remaining 49, they're in that drawer compositional factor. But of course, as I just said, there are also things that are neither mind nor body, nor physical, nor mind, such as the tendencies, the imprints, and they go into that big drawer, the compositional factor. Okay? So these are part of us, but again, they're not mind and they're not, yeah. So potential goes in there as well. Potential. We have a certain potential because we have this mind and body, there's potential, and that's part of us. So we have to use that. We can't just say we consist of mind and body. It's not just that, there's also certain potentials we have, right? It's all part of that. Functions, potential, we can all include that in that particular drawer. They're all associated with mind and body, but they are not mind and body. Associated with, but are not. Okay, but now, why, first of all, the physical gets only one drawer? Doesn't seem fair. We've got so many organs, so many blood vessels, so many cells. What is it, 30 trillion or something, right? So many. I think it's 38 trillion microorganisms in our body, 30 trillion cells. So anyway, we're outnumbered. We're a minority in our own body, to be honest, the cells. Anyway, so a lot. They should get a bigger drawer. But no, because here we're not interested so much in the body, because from a Buddhist point of view, finding lasting happiness depends mainly on the mind. Okay, so it just gets one drawer, because, okay, for a doctor, they have many drawers, and the mind may just get one, but we're not doctors. Therefore, different ways of dividing the who we are as a person, looking at the components. So the mind gets 4 drawers. But then 3 get very special treatment. Primary consciousness. Also, in technical terms, referred to as main mind. Main mind, primary consciousness, same thing. And I'm using primary consciousness here now because I tried to translate it from the Tibetan, Nambarshepa, versus Tsosem. So there are 2 words in Tibetan, might as well come up with 2 words in English, because we're basing everything on the Tibetan tradition. But it doesn't matter whether I say primary consciousness or main mind. Mind and consciousness in Buddhism, not in other disciplines, but in Buddhism, they mean the same thing. Awareness, mind, consciousness, same thing. Awareness is called awareness because it's aware, right? It's that entity that is mainly responsible for being aware. Consciousness is that faculty, that non-material thing that is mainly responsible for us being conscious. And mind is mind. Doesn't get that kind of like, it's mindful. No, no, no. That's not how it works. Okay. Having said all that, okay, so what is the cup? That's a very important question you asked right away. Very impressive that she asked that important question. Because with the other feeling and discernment, I already talked about their function. So the question then arises, what is the function of the main mind? What is the function of the main mind? To apprehend. to perceive. That's the main function. So actually, the main mind and its feeling, for instance, are not separate. I give you an example. Okay, I'm using Shubham. Is it Shubham or Shubham? No, what is Shubham? Bam, okay. Pam. Oh. Shubham. I cannot say it really well. Shubham. So anyway, Shubham as a person. That's like the mind, right? So his main function is being a person. Okay? That's his main function. Being a human being. That's his main function. Being a human. But then there's Shubham, the student of the Dharma. Right? From the perspective of being a Dharma student. From the perspective of being a computer geek, computer expert, right? From the point of view of, let's say he's a really good cook. I don't know, but let's say he is. So you see from the perspective, Shubham the cook, Shubham the Dharma student, Shubham. So his main function is just to be a human being. That's his main function, his main activity, being human. But then from the perspective of what he can do, like specific functions that are also not always active. Right now he's not cooking food, right? So therefore right now he's not active as a cook. He's active right now as a Dharma student. So now you would have the factor of Dharma student associated with Shubham, the human, that is always present. You have different activities happening, right? So right now, what is there? There is the main Shubham, the human, it's always present, associated with Shubham, the Dharma student. That would be like the mental factor. So you can't separate them. It's not like, oh, there's Shubham, the Dharma student, there's Shubham. But conceptually, I can. I can conceptually name it differently in order to understand him better. Does that make sense? So Shubham the cook and sometimes it's like the computer geek, the Dharma student, all comes together. The technician, he functions as the technician of these classes and he's the Dharma student. So he has two factors coming together. Does that make sense? Now, again, with Shubham, I don't need to do that. It's not that important. It's not about understanding the person as much as understanding the mind that determines who the person is. So therefore, in Buddhist psychology, it's important to understand the different activities or functions of the mind. Here, function, activity is really basically the same thing. So what can the mind do? What does it do? In every moment of awareness, it's not just perceiving things. There's more to it. So there's this basic function of perceiving things. That is always there, being aware, being conscious. Okay? I mean, even we say unconscious, someone is unconscious, we don't mean that the mind that is there is not conscious. We mean the sense consciousnesses are right now not there, so unconscious in terms of sense perception. Consciousness is always there, so there's always a main mind. But there are different functions. But there are actually 5 main functions always present. Always present. The mind always makes contact with an object. There's always mental engagement. Never mind, we don't need to go into all these. It's too complicated to explain all of them. But there's 2 very important functions, and I'll tell you why in a moment, why they're so important. There's feeling and there's discernment. That's always there. Our mind always discerns. However subtle that discernment may be, we may not even be aware of the discernment happening. For instance, right now, if I perceive this table, the discernment means I distinguish this table from everything that is not table. Because what appears is more than just the table. There's like a whole area that is in the sphere of my vision. And yet, I'm only paying attention to the table. That's again that mental engagement, that function. And because I'm able to discern, therefore, I know very clearly where the table starts and where it ends. It seems, at least. On a molecular level, things are different. But just from how I perceive the world, oh, this far is the table, and beyond that, it's something else. Does that make sense? That's because of discernment. Okay? Then there's also feeling. I'm not really, I'm not attached to this table. So it's not like, wow, the table, great, it's in front of me, I'm so happy. No. Am I suffering because I see? No. So it's neither pleasant nor unpleasant, so a neutral feeling. So it's always a feeling. If now I walk into the kitchen and I see my favorite food, is even pleasure experienced with the eye consciousness. Eye consciousness is not the eye. The eye doesn't experience pleasure, but the consciousness itself, perceiving an object that I really like. So there's pleasure. Or perceiving something that I don't like. There's, displeasure, if you like, the opposite of that. Or it's neutral. A lot of the time it's neutral. So there's always a feeling. Those functions are always present. Discernment and feeling. Right? And there are other ones, and again, no need to go into them. And then anger is not always there. But anger is also a mental function. It influences, of course, the entire mind, but just seeing it from the point of view of exaggerating the negativity of the object, seeing the object as one with that negativity and then wanting to be separated or wanting to harm it, that function of the mind we describe as anger. Right? And when the mind displays that function, when the mind becomes angry, in other words, then only because that function has now become part of it, and now we conceptually separate it out and see it from the perspective of that function, and we call it the mental factor of anger. So conceptually, we're separating it, but actually it's inseparable. Like Shubham is the same person, right? Shubham the cook, Shubham the technician, Shubham the Dharma student. They're one nature, but still different. We can conceptually separate them, and so therefore we say they're separate, but still inseparably linked. They're different, no, so I shouldn't say separate. Different, but inseparably linked. Can't be separated, but different, conceptually different. Right? Different just means conceptually I think of it differently. It appears differently to the mind. Yeah? Not different as in like, I can put one here and the other one there. Not like that. Does that make sense? You had a question? Or you raised your hand at least.
In primary mind, like it's perceiving, and discernment is distinguishing, but then like what's the difference between this and perception? Wouldn't it be
Perception. Perception is the activity given to the name, perception. But perceiving is the perception, when you use a noun to describe the perceiving, I mean, in the English language, you have a way to say perception, right? So the perception takes place within the mind. That's how we use it. But mind is labeled on the basis of that which does the perceiving. So the perceiver. The perceiver is a perceiver because there is perception. So the mind is the perceiver, if you want.
Doesn't the eye consciousness does the perceiving part?
Pardon?
The eye consciousness?
Yes.
I thought it did the perceiving part more than the main mind.
It perceives more than the...
I mean,
The eye consciousness, there's a main mind eye consciousness. So the eye consciousness consists of a main mind. So that's seeing the eye consciousness from the perspective of just perceiving its object. We label it main mind. Right? Is that not... You see, like when I say Shubham the cook, right? I'm labeling Shubham the cook on the basis of a certain activity that he performs at certain times throughout his life. So similarly here, there's an experiencer. So from the point of view of that experiencer, that in this case perceives only shape and color, can't think, can't get angry, right? So it's a direct experiencer. That mind, from the point of view of perceiving its object, I call it main mind. From the point of view of experiencing pleasure or displeasure or neither, I call it feeling, the I consciousness, so the feeling aspect, or feeling mental factor. Or from the point of view of the fact that not only does it perceive its object, it can also discern, right, between the table and the carpet. Then I call that function of the mind, I describe as the mental factor of discernment. Yeah? So it's we don't talk like that in everyday life. I say, oh, the mind does this, the mind does that, the mind has many different functions, and that's it. Here, what they're doing is, they call it a mental function, and the way it is expressed, it seems it's separate. Even the analogies they use, they say, you know, it's like the main mind is like the palm of your hand, and the functions are like each finger.
Or Prime Minister and its cabinet.
The Prime Minister and the cabinet, the soup and the broth. So many, or the candle is like the main mind, and the rays are like the mental factors. And they're always separate. In the analogy, they're always separate. The palm of the hand and the fingers, although they're linked, but it's not like looking at the same thing from a different perspective. But that's just to understand it first. So in the beginning, it really seems like there's a main mind, and right next to it, running right next to it, is the feeling. No, that's just how it's expressed, to understand it better. But when you explain it, it's really just giving the different functions different names and calling the secondary functions mental factors, and the main functions, or the mind from the perspective of the secondary functions, mental factors, but the one function that is part of its definition, which is knowing, basically, or perceiving something, right? By way of the object appearing, yeah? So clear, something appears to it, but then the mind actively perceives it. Yeah? It's that engagement coming from the side of the object. The mind engages the object, it perceives the object, right? Apprehends the object. So that is the main function of the mind. From that perspective, we say main mind.
So the I consciousness falls into which aggregate then? The first one?
The I consciousness also has a main function and 5 secondary functions. So we say it has a main mind and 5 mental, the omnipresent mental factors they're called, because they're always present. With every moment of awareness, you have 5 secondary functions that are always there. One of them is feeling, and one of them is discerning. Does that make sense? Okay.
According to me, when you say I consciousness, it's all about seeing something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If I'm seeing something, I don't know if the word for it, but that's the other sense that we have. So that is one sense consciousness.
Yeah, that's the body consciousness.
Body consciousness, right?
Yeah, that perceives tactile objects.
I can understand feeling with respect to the skin,
Yeah.
but from respect to the eye, you mean if I see something and what I feel about it is...
There's pleasure. So feeling, we borrow the English term here, but you know, when you see something and you're pleased to see it, right? You're pleased to see it. So there's an experience of pleasure associated with the eye consciousness. The eye consciousness is more than just the eye, the color, the shape that's reflected in the retina. That's not the eye consciousness. No, it's that conscious entity that if there's something that we like, for instance, experiences pleasure. If something we don't like, displeasure. Of course, influenced by our mental consciousness. What we see anyway is influenced by the mental consciousness, but even the feeling, yes. However, influenced by it, but nonetheless still experiencing pleasure or not. Just pleased, just that's it, pleasure. I don't know, for lack of a better word. So feeling here doesn't mean it feels smooth, it feels cold. No, it's only pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Yeah, but for lack of a better word, we have to use the English word and then kind of slightly redefine it, because otherwise it won't work. So in the Buddhist context, feeling is usually, although even in Tibetan it's sometimes used looser, but in the sense of the mental factors, feeling is pleasant, feeling unpleasant. In that context, it's always used in that way. Feeling or a pleasant feeling, unpleasant, or neutral. Having said all that, okay, and then there's so many other different functions of the mind that can be there, don't have to be there. You learn that when you learn about the mind, you learn all that. What are the functions that my mind performs? It's quite fascinating, and you recognize them. And you realize, oh yes, sometimes I feel like that, sometimes I have this, sometimes, but as I said, there's always an object, there's always some form of discernment and feeling. But why are these two separated out? Why do they get a separate drawer, in other words? If there's so many, there are 5 omnipresent mental factors, 2 of them are feeling and discernment. What about the rest? The 3 are the other ones. And so the texts, usually for the main texts that are, it's the Abhidhammakosha, for instance, that says the reason for, it's one particular text, an important text. So in that text, it's actually considered to be part of the wisdom teachings of the Buddha. In there it says that they play a huge role in our life. Our feeling, for instance. Oh my God, come on, feeling, right? Feel good, attachment. Don't feel good, aversion. Neither, kind of, I'm indifferent, I ignore. We see? So our most basic kind of mental afflictions are controlled by that. You know, we seek pleasure all the time. And the greater the pleasure, the faster we become attached. In the same way with aversion. Right? There's aversion, there's anger. Even if there's just a displeasant and unpleasant feeling, I'm not pleased. Right? I have a physical discomfort, and then there's someone responsible for that. I'm angry with them. I may even be angry with my body or whatever. So you see, feelings play a huge part in our life. They pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Unpleasant feeling, we can only bear that much, and depending on what feeling that is. And then here I'm talking about also the mental feeling, of course, mentally having unpleasant feeling because of boredom, or because of being in a bad mood for no apparent reason, or because of being sad, or because of feeling fearful. We associate that's considered an unpleasant feeling. Depends though, you know, like those the people who do like bungee jumping and crazy favorite things. You know, it's kind of like fear, but it's almost like exhilarating. It's an exhilarating fear. Or people who watch horror movies, right? They want to be scared. They love to be scared. So it's like, that's a fear. It's not necessarily unpleasant. It can be, you know, feel like pleasure as well. So it's very interesting. So therefore the point is, pleasure for an ordinary person very much determines how they act, right? Pleasure, feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Whereas discernment, if you're not governed by your emotions, then you're governed by your discernment, all right? If you're not governed by that feeling, I should say, not emotion, by that feeling, it's discernment. So educated people, for instance, like the more educated you are, the less you're possibly driven by your feeling. Your feeling still plays a huge role, but just because you really feel like eating a kilo of chips, and you know it's really not good for you, right? If you have no idea it's not good for you, you're going to eat what you like. But we discern, this is good for me, this is not. So that starts to determine our actions. And in the text, they talk about disagreement between people who don't have that level of education. Disagreement comes from feeling, and discernment, once you have an education, your disagreement comes from discernment. The way you see things, the way what you consider good or bad and so forth, how you discern your environment. But I think it's not just about disagreement, it's also what governs us. Feeling governs your action. Like for instance, an animal. An animal is much more governed by pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feeling. Much less about, oh, this is good for me, or this is not, right? Sometimes there's maybe just a physical, ugh, I don't want to eat this, all right, because it's actually not good for them. But I know chocolate, dogs eat chocolate, they like chocolate, but they die if they eat chocolate. There's something in chocolate that kills dogs, for instance. A little bit is probably okay, but a lot, it'll actually kill them. So they would love to eat it, but there's no knowledge that it would actually make them sick or even kill them. So therefore, these two are important for the reasons I just gave. I mean, of course, there's disagreement in terms of feeling, they're very much that, but also discernment, those two. They're explained separately. And then all the other ones are part of compositional factor. That's why you have the 5 aggregates. Okay? So again, you want to understand the mind better, you want to understand the person better, and of course a huge part of that is understanding the mind. You want to transform the mind, very important. That's the main goal of Buddhism. You have the body, that's one category of form. Then you have the main mind, the primary consciousness or main mind. That's just a function from the point of view of the main function of the mind to perceive its object. Then you have 2 mental factors that are very important: feeling, pleasure, pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, and neutral, as well as discernment or discrimination. Discrimination sometimes has a negative connotation, so I'll use the word discernment, but the term discrimination is also sometimes used as meaning discernment. That's the 4th mental factor. And then everything else that is not already included in the other 4 is compositional factor. So those are the 5 skandhas, or the 5 aggregates in English. Yeah? Okay. I hope those are clear. You come across those, and it's a really weird way of dividing things, but I guess in ancient India, when the Buddha was around, that way of looking at the mind and mental factors may have already existed, just in a different form, or somehow that was the easiest way for people to understand mind and body. Whereas when I teach Dharma, I usually, when people are new to the Dharma, I may not use the terminology. I haven't really used 5 aggregates. I say mind and body, which is just a less detailed categorization or classification of what we are made of, our components, our parts. Does that make sense? Okay. All right.
So would energy fall in?
Energy is physical. Energy. So Ashwin's question is energy. What is energy? It's physical. It's physical. It's subtle. But, nevertheless, physical. Yeah, it's absolutely part of the body. But then you say, oh, but we leave behind the body. We leave behind the body. The mind goes on to the next life. Yeah, that's the one. And that you don't find in the sutric explanation. But in Tantra, you find there's a very subtle aspect that is physical that goes from one life to the next. Right? Yep. And then explain the formless realm.
So should we take a tea break?
Yes, let's take a tea break. All right. Okay. Thank you.